Excellent!
We have kind of a nice golden hue going on right now.
It's my radiance.
It's a nice look.
It's my positive energy.
It's probably due to not white balancing, but actually I'm going to go with it. It's nice. It's because it's fall now. It's fall.
White balancing is overrated.
Even though we're in Southern California and it still thinks it's summer, it's like, hey, we want summer to last forever, even though it's like middle of October.
I don't want
Hey everyone, and welcome to Awesome Hardware. This is the live show that Kyle and I do every Tuesday evening at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, and we stream live to twitch.tv/awesomehardware. If you're watching this show in the future on YouTube, you're watching my half of the show, which is on my channel, Paul's Hardware, and we're also going to do the second half of the show later on, which will be on Kyle's channel, Awesome Sauce News.
It's amazing how consistent we are.
Yeah,
that whole thing never changes.
I'm getting better at rattling that stuff off.
Yes,
but thanks to all you guys for who are joining us live. There were lots of people in the chat room beforehand.
I know.
Talking about various things.
Your dog included.
They're talking about my dog.
They love Nori.
She keeps. We're at Kyle's. We also switch back and forth whose house that we do this at. So we're at Kyle's place right now. So Nori's not here. Kyle's cats might come in and try to slash our throats though.
Oh no.
Midway through the thing. That's kind of their thing.
I hate them.
That's kind of what they do. I said awesome news. I said awesome sauce news, right?
You mean network, or you mean awesome hardware? What are you talking about?
Oh, yeah, I said news.
Awesome Sauce News. I don't
Now,
even know
Awesome
what that
Sauce
is.
News
I've never heard that name in my
give
life
the
before,
URL.
Paul.
That's the URL. Awesome Sauce Network. Apologies. I guess I am wearing a shirt that says Awesome Sauce Network. Hey, speaking of the shirts that we're wearing,
nice.
We're both wearing Kyle's shirts today.
Don't you ever feel like a dick, like when I'm wearing a Paul's Hardware shirt and you're also wearing one? You're like, damn, he's such a good friend and I suck. That's how I feel right now.
That's how
like
Kyle
you wore one of
feels
my shirts and I wore one of my shirts too.
right
like
now.
I feel like an asshole.
In that case, we'll go to your store first as well. Guys,
Okay.
if you watch our stuff and you want to help support us and also get yourself some merchandise, you can do so on our stores. This is Kyle's store, which is awesomesaucenetwork.com/store. He has his ever-popular CPU Cooler shirt, as well as the increasingly popular Stay Positive shirt.
Yeah, it's gaining on the CPU Cooler shirt in terms of popularity, which is pretty surprising. So, I think I'm sold out of larges right now, but every other size should still be there. I will be re-upping them soon, probably in a week or so.
All right.
But you should still pick one up.
All the classics. Also, we have an ongoing hoodie sale. Our hoodies are all $10 off, so if you want to get something nice and warm and soft for the winter time, there's the hoodies on Kyle's store. This is my store if you want to buy stuff with my logos on it. You can do that, which is store.paulshardware.net. And I have shirts as well as thumbscrew stuff. I also have glassware, such as this glass, which I will be filling with beer very soon. Glasses and mugs and all that good stuff. And the hoodie sale is also going on my store. So I just have one hoodie. It's great.
Both of our hoodies are, what, $30 now?
Yeah, $30.
So they're normally $40 hoodies. They're $10 off on both of our sites. And I just want to stress, these are really high quality hoodies. Like,
yes, indeed.
I went to the mall the other day and I saw a hoodie that was jack shit compared to the level of quality that Paul and I sell ours for, and it was like $60.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, what the F? Like, these are actually really good, and they have some of the best logos that you can find on a hoodie these days. So why not?
Crap out of hoodies.
Just saying.
If you can.
Shit.
All right. Moving on to beer. We typically also enjoy a frosty beverage during the show, so I'm drinking Ballast Point. This is just their standard pale ale, which I don't think I've ever tried this.
It's pretty tasty.
Pretty tasty.
I'm not a
bad.
huge pale ale fan, just a hardcore pale ale. I'm more into the IPAs.
The IPAs.
But Ballast Point is one of my fave breweries for sure.
Kyle's birthday was this past week.
It was.
So his beer was provided to him by me as a birthday present. I personally bought this for Kyle.
No, that's not true.
That's not true at all.
You didn't buy this at all. Don't take credit for this.
I didn't get Kyle anything.
How dare
for his
you?
birthday.
This was provided by our good friend Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
From Monoprice. You can follow him on Twitter, Steve_OMG. And he stopped by my house yesterday and dropped this off for me. It's actually from Sierra Nevada, which I'm not a huge Sierra Nevada fan. I do like their Torpedo IPAs, but this is their Ovila. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. It's an Abbey ale that's barrel-aged. It's a Belgian-style double, which sounds delicious, so I'm going to open it right now.
It's got a cork.
It's got a fancy cork, so you know it's good. And I'm going to try to not...
If that goes anywhere near my laptop...
Ready? All right, do you think I can hit your GH4?
You could. There's lots of...
Oh, how underwhelming.
It's not bubbly.
Yeah, but you know, sometimes you see the cork, you expect it to fly off the handle, unless it's wine.
Okay.
But we'll see how this is. Thank you, Steve.
All right. Thank you, Steve, and thank you to Steve's bottle of beer for not going everywhere.
And cork.
Okay. Cheers.
Cheers.
Kyle gets his beard poured.
Yes.
Cheers. Cheers to all of you guys. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here at the top of the show.
Yep.
And Kyle's
Oh,
somewhat
that's good.
Kyle's somewhat disappointing uncorking of his beer. Everyone's like, "Oh God!" And it's like
Very anticlimactic, but
little blooper.
probably
there.
for the best.
All right, let's dive right into the meat and potatoes
I love meat and
of today's
potatoes.
show. Right, we've finished all of our announcements.
We should do a special segment, just impulse idea, called the meat and potatoes.
Meat and potatoes.
Like just another segment where we have like Dimitri from Hardware Canucks just talk about potato news.
Oh, that,
And meat.
Why
And meat.
Dimitri?
Because he's Russian.
Oh, yeah.
He loves potatoes. Come on.
We need to get Dimitri, since he's Russian, and we need to find someone from Idaho, and have them like debate each other.
Wait, Josh is not Idaho.
I don't think he's from. No, he's from like.
Okay.
Yeah, some.
We could probably find
other
some-
Midwestern state.
Right.
They all merged together.
Welcome to this segment, my friends. This is a meat and potatoes. I'm your host Dimitri
I
from
think we should
Hardware
go for it.
Canucks. Yeah.
Guys, let us know in the comments
Meat and potatoes.
if you want the meat and potatoes. Eventually, he might talk about meat. They can also discuss meat,
Yeah.
I imagine.
But mostly potatoes.
Okay. My first segment, however, wait, I have segment titles, is called Tech of the Day after tomorrow. I'm trying. I really, at some point, I'm gonna get that.
Our lack of a mixing board
Yeah,
is more and more apparent each and every show.
I still like my ice cream here, though.
Ice cream's good.
It's like a nice frosty there.
Mm.
Tech of the day after tomorrow. So I'm gonna. This is technology of the future. That's the idea here. It's
All
pretty
right.
straightforward. All right. So let's jump over to a story from Hexus.net about Georgia Tech researchers doing CPU on-die liquid cooling.
Hmm.
Kind of fascinating.
Okay.
We've discussed liquid cooling of various types here on the show, but actually integrating it into the CPU die,
Wow.
that's a little bit different. The story is originally from PC Perspective. Georgia Tech researchers have made microfluidic passages on the chip die itself and pumped water through. So when you talk about like the manufacturing process that a processor, or that the die of a processor is made on, let's talk about the size of the lithography that's used to actually carve out the little channels that eventually lead to electrons passing through them. So they've basically carved channels out specifically on this 28 nanometer. It's an Altera FPGA chip that they did this with. And they've carved out extra little channels in between them specifically to pipe water through. Actually, silicon cylinders, 100 microns in diameters. And those channels are just a few hundred microns away from where the chip transistors are actually operating. So you might assume that placing this water cooling that close to the transistors might lead to much better performance, and indeed it did.
What are the numbers? That's all I care about.
To the tune, well, under air cooling, this chip was running at 60 degrees Celsius using the on-die water cooling technique, and they were using liquid or water at 20 degrees. The chip ran at 24 degrees, so it brought it from 60 all the way down to 24. That's
And this
pretty,
is under load, I'm guessing?
I have to assume so.
Right.
The article didn't really specify.
60
but yeah.
degrees to idle is
If
pretty
it was
hot.
running at 60, yeah, it better be doing some thinking if it's running at 60.
Or they're in Phoenix.
And you guys can see this interesting little picture here. I mean, obviously, this is not anything that anybody can do at home, I think would be...
Never seen a CPU with nipples.
Yeah, the CPU's got kind of nipples protruding
that's a tech
off the
first
top
for
of
me.
it. So the
They're being milked.
yeah, the silicon layer they put a silicon layer over the entire thing to seal over the fluid passages except for the inlet and outlet that you saw in the picture. And it's thought that applying this technology could eliminate the need for heat sinks or cooling fans on top of integrated circuits completely. So, I don't know, this seems different than the direction I feel like stuff's been going, because this is like, water cooling has always seemed like something that's very sort of either niche, or it's like only at the very highest end of like the high-end computing stuff where you really need that much cooling to cool down these really hot parts. Here it's like, well, maybe if we consider actually building liquid cooling into the manufacturing process, then you get that cooling advantage right from like close to the source, or as close to the
Right.
source as possible.
Right.
And then you completely negate even having to have stuff like big old heat sinks with fans blowing across and that kind of thing.
It's true.
That's interesting.
It depends on how much more expensive something like this would be.
Yes.
Versus buying like an AIO or even doing some custom water cooling.
It also depends hugely on the very few actual CPU manufacturers that
Who are willing
exist,
to do
which
it.
should be like ARM, Intel, and AMD. Basically, I mean, there's some other fabs out there and stuff, but
Right.
them actually integrating this in, because they have to design it in there. But still, quite fascinating. And my question would be like, how do you connect it? Like, are those G1/4 fittings on there? Like, what do you what else do you have to do to integrate this into a loop?
Right.
Or something like that.
And can those attachments, those tube attachments and fittings, be, removed somehow from that die if you were to say swap out the CPU later down the line, or do you have to buy a whole new? Does that come included with a whole new kit and attachments? I mean, how? I guess the maintenance aspect of it is also a big question, because you change something like that, if you're going to integrate into the architecture process, it's everything's going to trickle down essentially, and it's going to affect. It's going to have this domino effect on everything else, on how you actually water cool your system. And
okay, I'm gonna do a quick straw poll here, because I'm kind of interested to hear this from you guys, and I'm just gonna give 3 categories here. I'm just interested in how much more money. So let's assume that there was a 6700K out there. Oh geez. Let's assume there's a 6700K processor out there, and you could buy it as a 6700K, or you could buy it with little plugs on it that allows you to hook up a couple tubes and water cool it. How much more money would that make that CPU worth to you? And I did $50, $100, and $150 because, let's face it, if you're going to liquid cool a CPU, you got to buy a CPU block at the very least, and those are probably going to cost you at minimum $50.
Yeah.
Often they run up
90
more.
for the nice ones.
They run up more towards the $100 range there. So, if you guys want to answer that, I just put $50, $100, or $150 plus to see. Maybe it'll give some of our manufacturer friends an idea of how much they should be charging for this type
So
of thing.
this is how much more money would you pay than a custom?
Yeah, how much money?
Solution?
So on top of the price of the CPU. So
on top of the
if
CPU.
the CPU costs $200,
What premium?
the one that has the channels integrated for liquid cooling would be $250,
Right.
or $300 or whatever. Well, I'll come back to that in just a moment. Let's talk about this next story real quick. HP and SanDisk have partnered up on storage class memory. This is specifically to take on Intel and Micron's 3D XPoint. By the way, it's 3D XPoint.
Not XPoint.
Not XPoint.
Right.
For anyone who's saying words and wants to say them correctly.
We've talked about this on the previous episode, I think.
We
briefly.
have. We talked about Intel's and Micron's, but this is HP and SanDisk. So this is a competitor.
Right.
In my mind, this is a very good thing.
Yeah.
Because competition.
Intel needs as much competition as they can get right now.
Indeed they can.
Yeah.
So just a few things about this. Specifically, so let's differentiate between HP and SanDisk versus the Intel Micron stuff. So talking specifically about the HP SanDisk stuff, HP already has memristor technology. SanDisk has a non-volatile RAM memory technology. For the sake of timeliness, I'm not going to go and explain what those are. Also, I would not be very good at explaining it right now, since I only have a loose understanding of it myself. But the upshot is that by combining these two technologies together, they're able to create storage class memory. Storage class memory, if you guys aren't up with the recent discussions of this, is basically combining your system memory and your system storage into one thing. And storage class memory, primarily right now, what they've been talking about adopting it for is enterprise use, because that's where you get the most benefit from it right out of the gate. Also, new technology like this is typically very expensive right out of the gate. So, but 1,000 times faster and 1,000 times the endurance of current flash storage technology is the comparison they're giving, which incidentally is exactly the same hyped up, nicely rounded numbers that Intel and Micron gave for 3D XPoint.
Right.
So there seems to be some similarities between these. I don't know if there's similarities architecturally in how they work, or it's just similarities in what they're able to achieve with the actual output. But if we have two companies or two groups of companies doing this independently, then I think that's good for the consumers, because it means they'll have to compete with each other.
Yeah.
And it's much better to have that situation. It's also expected to offer significant cost, power, density, and persistence improvements over DRAM technologies, and it's expected to be deployed in tens of terabytes per server node. Tens of terabytes, and to be used in applications such as in-memory databases, real-time data analytics, transactional, and high-performance computing. High-performance computing, to me, says, and maybe, you enthusiasts out there are going to get some high expensive but super fast stuff.
In a very specific use case scenario.
You'll get it in the high-end PC market, and then maybe you'll see it start to trickle down after that. But really fast storage. HP and SanDisk partnership will result in accelerated development. Also, this is sort of a secondary thing, of HP's research project that they have dubbed the Machine.
The Machine.
Which
It's so
sounds
daunting.
it's very, which is a project that aims to enable a new computing model
Skynet.
over the long term, and also lead to Judgment Day, the rise of the machine, Skynet, and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if those are directly associated, but I'm very excited about the Machine.
Could they be any more on the nose? It's called the Machine.
It's called the Machine.
And it takes us all by surprise in 2035.
But at the same time, HP and SanDisk, which is part of what we've already discussed a little bit of the show, a little bit prior on a previous show, I forget, it was a couple weeks ago, I think. Right. They're already, as we mentioned, working on Intel's Optane SSDs, which are based on Intel's 3D XPoint technology. Right. And Optane SSDs are expected next year. Whereas the stuff that HP and SanDisk is working on is expected, I believe, in like 2020 or 2022 is when they're talking about retail. And actually, Intel and Micron already even demoed at an event the comparison between these two. They tested the Optane versus their highest-end enterprise class SSD, the P3700. The Optane beat it by 5.21 times the speed, achieving 401,000 IOPS at a Q depth of 8 versus the P3700, which only did 77,000 IOPS.
Only.
There was a limited number of tests that they run, but definitely some exciting stuff on the horizon, especially if you're into really fast storage. And the fact that Intel is working on stuff for next year, I mean, that's pretty cool. You have to assume that the HP SanDisk partnership might take a bit more. I don't know. I feel like they're going to need to accelerate their stuff. I'm reposting the straw poll so that I can also click on the straw poll and bring it up.
By the way, big shout outs in chat to Coked Up Canary. How's it going, Rooster?
What's up, Rooster?
Thank you for coming in and modding. You do your job, damn it. You do your freaking job. And also, Joker's in the house.
Oh, Joker's
Everyone,
here.
Warm welcome
What's
to
up,
Joker. How's it going, guys?
Kitty's there, too. Hi,
and Kitty. Hi, Kitty. And Manigeek as well, all the regulars. Thank you guys for being here.
All right. Let's show the results real quick from this one. How much more money would you spend for a CPU with liquid cooling integrated? $100.
$1.
A lot of people saying they'll drop 100. Wow. Even quite a few people saying that they'd spend
more people said 150
than
I thought.
Yeah. That's impressive.
I mean, going from 60 degrees Celsius to 24 or whatever it was you said, that's a huge jump.
Yeah.
And that's more than Hotline does. I'm sure it's more than, bigger delta than Arctic Panther or most other custom water-cooled systems can do. And yet we've probably spent countless amounts of money on water cooling, that sort of thing.
It would also mean that you wouldn't have to deal with thermal paste application at all. I would assume that if you had a CPU with that integrated on it, you would just get it, and then it'd be fittings or something where you hook it up to your loop.
Right.
Who knows? I mean, this is
it's already pre-applied in a certain way.
All very speculatory. But
cool.
Hey, thanks for the responses on that poll, guys.
I should have thought of that first.
What?
Integrating custom water cooling loops onto the die.
Well, hey, I mean, Intel.
$1 million idea right there.
I don't know if Intel has considered something like that. I mean, I have no idea if they've considered.
Wouldn't it be weird
that,
if when it got more polished and became ready for consumer purchase, that it almost came CPU started to come just like the Fury X, how it comes with a radiator attached to it. The GPU card's already there, but you get the CPU that's already welded to this AIO configuration in a way.
I feel like that would make it so much more if you still had an LGA socket. And you had to drop the CPU down and it's connected to a big
zero force insertion.
And you're trying to line it up, but it's got tubing pulling on it the other way and stuff like that. That could be. Maybe
it's a little too early for its time.
All right. Yeah. One more story here. I'm going to only talk about this one really briefly, but since we're talking about tech of the day after tomorrow. 3D printing, we've discussed a little bit. 3D printing can be used for stuff like printing with wood, metal, plastic, of course, most common. Nerves. 3D printed nerves.
You can print nerves?
That's what they're working on.
You can use nerves to print.
No, you can 3D print nerves.
Okay.
This is basically to provide, to bridge the gaps between the ends of torn nerves is what they're working on this technology to do, to sort of fill in the gaps is what they're talking about doing with this. They've talked about Y branches and nerve endings, as you can kind of see right here is what the printer is doing right now. They're very difficult to repair. So they're using a 3D scanner to record the information about the geometry of the missing piece, like a missing Y branch in a nerve, and then they use the 3D printer to print a silicon channel, And then it actually also deposits little biochemical cues, which is the colored bits that you can kind of see it dropping in there. And it drops those in, and those basically, and they promote nerve growth within the channel. And they've actually had a fair amount of success with this in lab rats. The group is also continuing to experiment working with different materials apart from silicon. They say in particular that they'd like to try a biodegradable material that they could insert, and then it would dissolve once the channel, because the channel is just there to kind of like provide the path where the nerve regrows itself.
Right.
But
it's a temporary thing.
Yeah, but if that could just dissolve away within the body
right.
After a certain period of time, then that would be pretty awesome. Anyway, they estimate that this technology could be ready for testing in humans in 5 to 10 years.
Wow.
Anyway.
That's pretty fascinating.
Yes, that's an MIT Technology Review article, and I wish I knew more about it to sort of like expand upon it, but I don't.
Or I wish I was Jerry.
But it's still pretty cool. I feel like we're almost
shed some light on
like how much longer until we can just 3D print a human?
Right, exactly.
Or like,
I think Joker said in chat that Jerry's currently working on a clone.
Oh yeah,
a 3D printed clone.
Jerry's he's printing himself in pieces and then assembling it all together.
Right.
Using that 3D printer gun.
He's actually sick of 3D printing, so he's actually going to clone a bunch, like an army, and then have them do all the 3D printing for him to create more clones.
So it's kind of like it's like
the Barnacles army is real.
It's like the nanobots that can replicate themselves
exactly.
that destroy the universe.
Yes.
Will actually be tiny versions of Barnacles.
Yep. This is how we end. This is how the world ends, folks.
You heard it here first, folks.
Laughing fat man.
All right. That's all for Tech of the Day After Tomorrow.
Terrifying.
Indeed it is.
Thanks for that.
Next up, we have another one of my lovely little sub-segments here, and this one is the ever-popular Tales from Space. I feel like all of my titles need to have echoey sound. Tales from Space.
The only one it doesn't work with is news, because it's really...
News. Yeah,
it just starts to sound sad after.
All right, so Tales from Space, we're going to start off with a pretty cool article. Basically, up in the space station, the ISS,
is that HoloLens?
International Space Station.
What is that?
No, well, they have 4K. They have brought 4K technology to the space station, and these are just some GIFs that they got going on.
What? Like the space station is the last one to hop on the 4K bandwagon.
Well, it costs money to haul stuff
rocking
up there.
4K monitors.
Right,
okay.
So this is astronaut Scott Kelly, and he's up there for a freaking year. He's got about 5 months left up there, so he's gotten bored, and out of his boredom, he's got a 4K camera, some blobs of water, and some colored dyes, and like some of those effervescent tablets. What do you call those? What's the brand name?
The ingestible
tablets?
tablets?
You eat Pop Rocks and the thing, and then you explode. No, why am I brain farting on it?
Wait, the ones
Pop Fizz. You put them in the thing, and it soothes your.
I don't know. Was that like
stomach?
Was that an '80s thing? Oh, Alka-Seltzer.
Alka-Seltzer. Yes.
Was that an '80s thing? Yeah, Alka-Seltzer.
Oh,
the '80s.
Oh God.
Nothing says the '80s like Alka-Seltzer.
Okay. Here, let me play this video for you. So yeah, they got a 4K camera up there, and they're basically they're studying the effects of just how things happen in space when they're under zero gravity, which you don't have around here. So like you get some water up there, and it like forms itself into a globe because it's in zero gravity.
Right.
Applies some food coloring to it in different colors, and that changes the color, so it goes from red and blue make green.
But isn't that how it works on Earth? Okay.
Yes. Now, here's the thing: you drop an Alka-Seltzer tablet into it,
right?
And on Earth, the tablet would go to the bottom, and all the fizz would come to the top.
Mm-hmm.
In space, the tablet goes to the center, and all
directions. It goes outward, right? In every direction.
In all directions.
I see.
And it's just funny because you can see it like shooting like little blobs of stuff.
Oh, so many
everywhere.
fun little science experiments you could do. I mean, that's how you kill time when you're in space, right there.
Yes.
You just dick around. With
I mean,
like
so visually, just kind of fun to watch since it's really high resolution.
Now, did they actually like stream this to Earth?
I don't think they can
4K footage.
I don't think they stream.
I don't
think they stream directly. They probably recorded it and transferred it over time or something like that.
They use Twitch.
But yeah, I mean, pretty cool. But yeah, and so I don't know. I don't know what else to say about this.
That's cool.
They are, practically speaking, 4K can be used to improve scientific experiments and analysis in space.
Yep.
That's the practical. That's the upshot. So, other than also sending us fascinating, pretty pictures to watch.
You know, I think they had 4K in space a long time ago, because I just watched The Martian, and it looked like it was already shot in 4K. So
The Martian.
Even Matt Damon's vlogs that he was doing
I haven't
on the Red Planet himself were like shot in 4K. So I think that article's BS.
I haven't seen The Martian yet. I'm
So
seeing it
good.
this weekend. So don't tell me how it. Don't tell me whether or not he
dies.
Don't tell me whether or not he gets trapped on Mars.
Everyone dies.
Okay. Next up, some more space news about China's space station. They are actually China is like they've opened up the welcome mat to people from the international community to come and participate.
No, they've opened up the Ni Hao mat.
The Ni Hao mat, yes, to come and participate in their space station. There's a conceptual view of their space station. This is their future manned space station, the one that they're planning to launch in 2022. Not the one that's currently up there, because China does already have a space station up there, which is called, shoot, I had the name of it here somewhere. It went away. Anyway, so China is planning for 3 modules on this space station. One is a living module for the astronauts who are up there, which I think there's going to be a nominal crew of 3 and a max crew of 6. And there's 2 more modules that are going to be like for experimentation.
Okay.
So they will house the equipment for experiments and study and that kind of thing. But they're inviting the foreign community to build add-on modules. So like, hey, this is a modular system. They're modules. So if other people or other nations around the world that are capable of sending stuff up into space, or at least that have the funds for the materials to send stuff into space, want to participate in some of these missions, they can actually build their own modules and dock them with the space station that China's planning, and they can have up to 3 more.
So it's like a crowdsourced space station.
A little bit.
Could we
it's
start
like a
seeing
crowd
like
country
Kickstarter
source.
campaigns of like, let's send a bouncy castle up to space?
Yeah.
And just like this bouncy castle just attaches to the Chinese space station. You just see a bunch of Chinese astronauts bouncing around.
Yeah, yes. That's what the U.S. should send up there.
That's what I would use my money for if I was a billionaire.
You'd send bouncy house castles to space.
Because it's awesome.
Why aren't you a millionaire?
$1 billion idea, and no one's jumping on it. I don't know what's wrong with people these days.
Don't you, like, by default have a bouncy thing in space? Because you're floating around, you bounce off the walls?
I mean, but this
I guess having padded walls to bounce off of might be helpful.
Instead of just going on forever.
Okay.
Haven't you seen Gravity?
So, anyway, China has signed initial space station cooperation agreements already with Russian and European space agencies.
Okay.
And they also, just a side note, they also plan to launch an astronomy telescope into an orbit near enough to the space station to dock it for upgrades and servicing, which I thought was just kind of unique. Space telescopes are cool just in general.
Yeah.
Just because they're in space, and you know all the deep space scans you see from like Hubble and that kind of thing, I always find fascinating.
Yeah.
But having a telescope close enough to a space station that you could access it from the space station might introduce more possibilities for upgrading the telescope down the road or that kind of thing, I guess.
Sure.
Anyway, but if you're wondering whether or not the U.S. is going to be involved with this, they're not. Or at least they're probably not, or at least not in the near future.
One thing that the U.S. isn't eager to get involved in, that's a first.
Well, here's an article from QZ.com. NASA can't help NASA cannot help China with their space station, specifically due to some U.S. lawmakers, or one U.S. lawmaker in particular. There's also an article down here about Bob Marley. Okay, never mind. All right, what the hell is going on here? So there's a ban on cooperation between NASA and China, or between United States NASA and working with China and China's space agency. This is the legacy of conservative lawmaker Frank Wolf. He cut off funding for working with China in protest of political repression there, as well as fear of sharing advanced technology.
Ooh.
This goes all the way back to like 1996 and that era. However, Frank Wolf may be retiring soon, and then maybe there won't be someone in Congress being dumb about collaborating for scientific means.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure he had his reasons or whatever, but
Sure.
I'm all for collaboration. international collaboration. You mentioned The Martian, and that's one of the key aspects of The Martian. Is like he get they get help, right? They work together.
They do.
Like China and Japan.
We probably shouldn't say much for people who haven't read the book.
We shouldn't say. I haven't seen it either, but I know that
more
there's
like
something.
This show, how you and I collaborate
Yes.
on this show, and it wouldn't exist without that fundamental bond that we share called collaboration, which is not anything having to do
Anyway,
with
this is also incidentally why the ISS, the International Space Station, has been built and manned and operated completely without any help from China. This is a big contributing factor to it was Frank Wolf's objections to it in Congress. And it's also why China went ahead and built its own space station, like I mentioned earlier. It's the Tiangong-1 is their current space station, and that went up in 2011. Anyway, NASA Administrator Charles Bolden said that the U.S., for its own good, ought to dump the ban and work with China because when you're talking about going to space, it takes a lot of money, and you kind of need international support there.
And science is one of those things, like, regardless of where you are in the world, you're all kind of reaching for the same goal, more or less.
Yes.
Space exploration, I mean, the unknown, it's like a, pun intended, I suppose, universal attraction that all humans share, you know, especially if you're in this kind of industry. It makes sense as a planet to kind of work towards this goal too. So to kind of eliminate that sort of partnership seems silly.
It's like it's the reason people watch
money related.
It's the people it's the reason people watch Star Trek and get all like misty-eyed and like hopeful about the future of mankind, because it's like, hey, they've, you know, it's envisioning a world where they've moved past, you know, the petty problems of international, you know, headbutting and stuff, and people are just working together towards the general good of mankind. Anyway, very idealistic, but hey, all right, we're at the halfway point of the show.
Yes.
I don't have a sponsor for my half of the show this week, because Kyle got behind. We're going to wait for that.
Yes.
Anyway, Gigabyte is the sponsor for Kyle's half of the show. We'll say, hey, thanks Gigabyte for sponsoring our show. They have been an ongoing sponsor. Yeah. So they're pretty awesome. But I'm actually going to take the midpoint here to throw out some Johnsons.
Oh, okay.
Indeed.
We
didn't even say at the beginning of the show that we're going to throw out Johnsons, but that is something that we do. Holy crap, Kyle.
What? Well, no, a lot of them are low stock.
Those are low stock ones.
Yeah.
All right. If you guys happen to order something from one of our stores while we are doing the show live and we notice it and we remember to throw out the Johnsons, we yell Johnson. Yes. And that's just become a sort of peculiar tradition.
Just something we do.
Something we do. Don't ask us to explain. Peter and Bruce both get big old Johnsons.
What?
Peter and Bruce.
Oh, Peter, double Johnson in the house.
Double Johnson.
Double Johnson. Peter, who was your other guy?
Peter, thank you so much. Bruce.
Bruce got a double.
Bruce we get a double right there. Double, and hopefully no.
Double sounds amazing right
hopefully no copyright claims from In and Out.
Also
right,
got
that's amazing right now.
so
Why did
good.
you say that?
For those of you that are not fortunate enough to have one near you, a double is a burger from In and Out. In and Out Burger. Very popular on the West Coast.
They know what it is. It doesn't matter where they're from.
That's true. I guess you're right.
I'm just kidding.
And I feel sorry for you if you can't have one. Josh, also you picked up both a CPU cooler shirt and a Stay Positive shirt. Thank you, my brother. So maybe double Johnson for you as well, I suppose.
Beautiful.
For getting two of those, as well as Lenny. Lenny, thank you for picking up. You got a hoodie. Lenny got a hoodie. Yeah. 2X, my man.
Nice. Taking advantage of that hoodie sale.
That's right.
All right, and also Haphazard Damage. Thank you for throwing our store links into chat there. Appreciate that,
sir.
Thank
you, sir.
You know, we're missing.
We will continue.
We're missing Cell tonight.
You're right.
I have no idea why. And for the record, Cell is under no previous obligation to always be here modding for us.
But it does feel a little bit pristine and innocent in chat, right?
Anyway, if anyone knows where Cell's at,
Cell's got our homeless radar.
We always wish him the best.
He's got our homeless man radar, right?
All right. Let's move on to my next segment. My next segment is Swordfight. Yeah. Indubitably. All right, time for Swordfight. Here's the way Swordfight works. I've got a couple news stories. Both of those news stories sort of beg a question, or I've made up a question based on them.
Question!
Kyle and I are going to take opposite sides of that question. We're going to debate each other, and we're going to sway your opinion possibly in one way or the other. I'll also be posting a link in chat, so you guys can vote on that, and then at the end we'll see what you guys voted on and who was right.
And whoever wins will be claimed the master debater.
Who was right and who is dead. Wait,
What?
What's that from?
It sounded like
Is this
Sherlock.
right? And who is it? No, maybe that's Princess Bride
Oh, maybe.
with the poison.
I've only seen it once.
Who's right and who? Maybe. Yeah. Hey, as long as you've seen it once,
That's right.
it should stick with you. All right. So let's. Wait. What
Bad
am I
memory.
doing? What am I doing? What am I doing?
Blah, blah,
What am I doing?
blah, blah.
Okay.
Sword fight.
Sword fight. All right. So let's start off with the story here, and this story is from OC3D.net. EK, who makes water blocks, water cooling supplies of all kind. Kyle and I have both used their products.
Exhibit A.
And Exhibit A is Hotline back there behind us. And EK, they make some really nice products. They, this week, though, announced an Intel SSD 750 series water block.
Yes.
Indeed. So my first thought was, well, Kyle needs this because he has EK cooling in his liquid-cooled system behind us, and he also has the Intel SSD 750
True.
PCI Express SSD, which you painted black, right?
Yeah.
Painted black, but now you
Yeah.
could just put a water block on it. He'd have to drain his loop and switch everything out. So it's totally what you're gonna do, right? ASAP.
That's, I guess, what we're here to solve, right?
That's what we're here to solve.
the question of the
All right,
hour.
now, I am of two minds. I am of two minds about this, and as I speak here, I will also post the straw poll in chat so you guys can actually figure out what the heck I'm talking about. I'm of two minds about this. One is like it's water cooling. It's like high-end PC stuff. Water cool your shit, and it makes it better, and then it's just better because it's fancy and stuff.
Yeah.
The other half of me is thinking to myself, what practical benefit? Because I always got to be practical. What practical
course.
benefit does this even provide? I mean, Intel briefly dabbled with overclocking SSDs. They were almost going to launch an SSD that was like, hey, you can overclock this SSD and make it better. But so anyway, let's just get to the question: is it worth it to water cool PC components other than the CPU and GPU? CPU and GPU, most heat generating components.
Right.
Most direct benefit from actual liquid cooling from them because you can immediately almost always overclock them more or set them to higher frequencies, so you can say, yes, I water cooled and then I overclocked and then
Sure.
I got benefit from that. Whereas water cooling of other components such as VRMs on a motherboard, water cooling of memory, now water cooling of SSDs, Kyle got a, oh wait, I'm doing the wrong thing. Kyle got this one sent over to him as well for Pimp My PC.
I know which side this guy would take.
This is
in this debate.
This is Python Josh, and he took this whole system, which is an i7-880 Linfield, and he water cooled
The hard drives.
the hard drives included. These hard drives have liquid cooling on them via these little brackets that go in, and they have copper plates that sit on the side of the drives with channels through them, and water cooled all these hard drives in there. Now,
10 of them.
now don't get me wrong, I'm
What?
not saying no one should ever do this because I've seen some really sweet looking like custom build systems. But all right, Kyle, what side we should start arguing here? What side of this do you want to take? You think yes?
I'm gonna say no.
You're gonna say no.
No.
Okay.
It's already arguable enough, or debatable enough that custom water cooling your CPU and GPU is necessary. There's already that whole debate. I mean, there could be a sword fight on whether or not custom water cooling your CPU and GPU is necessary, and those are the two hottest, components in your system that not only are known to overheat the most, but also the only two that you can, usually the only two components in your system that you can overclock. So when you're
You
introducing,
better be careful. Jay is gonna like bust through the door and punch you in the face.
water cool all the things.
All right.
What if Jay was like a superhero? He was like water cooling man, like
Water cooling man.
steals a lady's cat, but then like water cools it and gives it back to her. She's like, oh, thank you, he's so much cooler now. Like just all the most unnecessary shit. He just water cools everything. Anyway,
pretty awesome.
Complete digression, but that would be cool.
Short
Surely.
film.
So yeah, I mean, if it's an SSD or a hard drive and you're just using it, you're a regular user. I mean, even in a server solution. I mean, if this was really essential, then companies like Cisco or like Netgear, for example, or D-Link, who make server racks, they would probably have found a way to implement this or they would just get RMAs all day long for their hard drives overheating from people who actually use their hard drives 24/7. You know what I mean? So again, it's one of those things where EK is a very successful brand. They do well for themselves in their market, and they're kind of just expanding, saying, where can we go next? And this is kind of more what I see as more sizzle than steak, where it's not really the meat of the issue. It's like, we need cooler SSDs. I mean, we're not constantly seeing people complain about their SSD or hard drive temps. If that was something that we would hear about on the reg, or if it was something that I was personally concerned about, then I could see the need for this. But to me, it just seems more like, well, look, I have an SSD that's water-cooled and you don't. Like, how many people do you know who have like a water-cooled frickin' NVMe SSD? That is pretty badass. And I would like to do a test on this personally with my 750 series Intel SSD that I have. Maybe just do some like Premiere editing or whatever, in Adobe Premiere, fire it up, check the temps and see the delta. Like, how much does it go up when when I'm scrubbing through? Let's say I've got some 4K footage, I scrub it through. What does the centigrade jump up to? You know what I mean?
Throttle or anything like that?
Because I mean, typically, it'll vary from drive to drive, but around 50 degrees Celsius should be about where you want to be. If it's hitting 70 degrees or something like that, and I just haven't been noticing it, and that could somehow impact the longevity of my drive, then maybe it's something to consider. But before going to that extreme, maybe try putting a case fan next to it. Is it like tucked away and far away from any other intake fan, in your case, and it's just not getting healthy airflow? Because I do agree, some healthy airflow is going to help you if you're a hardcore storage user. But going to the extreme and water cooling, I feel, is unnecessary for the price that you'll probably pay for something like an EK water block.
Okay. I'm going to take opposite side, and I'm going to try to make my argument really quickly, because we're already running a little late. But when it was 2001 or 2002, and I was editing a massive project, and I was using two 80 gigabyte hard disk drives in RAID, and basically we came to the end of it, and the project was so massive and everything that would not output. The drives were overheating, and that caused them to not fail outright, but it did cause them to develop errors that didn't let us output the project. It was a big pain in the ass. If those drives were water cooled, would have solved the problem. You should water cool all of your drives.
Okay.
Okay.
I can never seem to beat you at these,
no,
Paul.
I could go further than that, but no, yeah. I mean, I'm all for enthusiast grade stuff. I'm all for liquid cooling stuff and liquid cooling stuff, even when it's silly. Practically speaking, for most people, it doesn't really make sense. But I don't mind that it's there. I will say that. All right. Anyway, let's see what you guys thought. How about I water cool your face? Apparently, it was the most popular.
Because that would make more sense, wouldn't it?
But anyway, most people said that silly and wasteful, provides no additional performance benefit. I gotta be careful with those third. I like putting the third option in there, but sometimes
it just steals the show.
Apparently, it gets a little bit too much. All right. What's next? All right, we have one other question here for Swordfight. Wait, we should have one other question for Swordfight.
Okay.
Except, did I even make a straw poll for it?
It's hot.
Yes, I did.
Are you hot?
What?
I want to take my pants off.
You're right. It is hot.
It's really hot.
I don't think I made this straw poll. I wrote everything out, but I didn't actually make the straw poll. At least I didn't put a link for it. And without a link, it's gone. It's gone forever. All right, guys.
No.
Apologies here, but
I'll go ahead and ask the question.
Yeah, you can ask the question, Kyle.
Because I have the show doc up here.
This is from
Paul's second sword fight is in regards to the Star Wars Battlefront game that we're all familiar with by now. The beta just closed. It was open beta. Everyone had it was a very like polarizing amount. There was a lot of polarizing feedback on how the beta was received. But it's recently been announced that there has been that there's going to be a $50 season pass for Star Wars Battlefront for all of the DLC. So that essentially means you pay $50 on top of the original game. Is that correct?
Yes.
And if you do that, you get 4 different expansions, 4 future expansions of the game's DLC when it comes out, months later or years later down the line. So that could be an issue with a lot of people. And so the question for the sword fight is, what is the least evil thing? The least evil thing when it comes to the way these huge corporate developers sell their games, or the little kind of mechanisms they introduce with their video games. So the first one was a season pass for paid DLC. All right, that's the first option. The second one is microtransactions that affect gameplay. And the third one is jump through hoops DRM on an otherwise completed game.
This would be much more compelling if I could actually link people to stuff, but I've never had this happen before.
Were you forgotten a straw poll?
No, I have everything pasted into straw poll and it's throwing an error. Like it won't let me create the damn thing. Hold on.
It's just Murphy's Law. The one time you really need to make a straw poll and it's time sensitive, it shits on you.
It's got something to do with the code or something like that.
But I'm just gonna go ahead and argue what I think. What's the least evil thing? Season pass for paid season pass for DLC, microtransactions that affect gameplay, or jump through hoops DRM on an otherwise complete game.
What is the least evil thing?
I'm gonna say microtransactions that affect gameplay. And it's hard for me to even argue any of these because they're all evil.
Error returned by server. Cannot read property.
Straw poll's totally taking a shit right now, Paul.
Straw poll is useless right now.
Anyone know of a good straw poll alternative? Hey!
Yeah, I can show people the article that we're talking about.
You could do that.
That's vaguely interesting. Burn it all to the ground.
Anyway, I'm going to argue microtransactions that affect gameplay are the least evil or hurtful to the gamer. So first off, let me go through the DRM thing. So Paul, I'm not very familiar with, certain DRM practices. I mean, I am, but the one example that Paul was telling me about earlier was how, you buy Battlefield 4 and you have to actually go into a server. It opens up Chrome and you have to, basically have these plugins and shit like that, which is essentially a way for the developer or EA to ensure that you're not actually installing the game on someone else's device, or that you've actually purchased the game legally and that you can't actually spread it. It's to prevent piracy and things like that.
I created the poll, Kyle.
Yay!
Good lord,
but what I feel like is that's messed up because you've already paid good money for the game, and for you to be treated like a potential criminal seems kind of insulting. It's like, really, you're gonna put on all these different DRM restrictions when I actually made the effort to pay for the game. Like, if I was really a pirate or didn't give a shit about supporting the dev, I would have just acquired the game for free through other means. But I actually paid you the money, and I'm still getting treated like a criminal in certain ways. The reason why the season pass sucks is because you're essentially gamers are paying money for content that isn't yet released.
Yes.
And they have no idea. Oftentimes, they don't know what that content's going to be. Was it the Batman Arkham Knight? They released some, people paid, pre-order DLC or whatever, and basically all they got were a few different Batmobile skins and different shit like that, and it wasn't anything what they had initially been promised. So that can be really disappointing. Microtransactions are still effed up because not everyone has the same amount of money that they can just pour into the game, and especially someone who's more well off financially is going to have a better stat player or a higher end player because they can afford those upgrades and things like that. Where someone else, granted they could probably achieve that through gameplay, right, and leveling up organically without paying, but it's going to take them a lot longer just because they're at a financial disadvantage. But the reason why this is okay, this is the least evil thing, I should say, not okay, but the least evil thing, is because the gamer is still getting something in return that they know what to expect in a way. Whereas a season pass paid DLC, you could get jack shit for what you paid, and you could be completely disappointed. But with microtransactions, gamers generally know what they're buying before they actually swipe the card. Do you know what I mean? And most of the time, you can see the benefit. You can weigh out all right, I see this is a good investment for me. I think it's worth the X amount that I'll pay for it. You do it, and you get what you're promised, pretty much. So that's the least evil thing. But they all suck. Yep.
Yes, they all suck, and sorry for the difficulty getting the straw poll up there, but that was my whole goal for this, was to make everyone choose between things that they already despise.
Yeah.
And where I wanted to come at this from was I was going to play the part of the executive at a game developer or a distribution company or something like that. And basically I look at all these things as basically they all boil down to money. they're game companies trying to make money, and especially the larger a game company gets, the more they need to make money in order to, meet their goals that they've stated at the beginning of the year and all the stupid stuff that companies do to be on the stock market and large companies. Anyway, all these things make money. The season pass, obviously, you're paying prior to getting the stuff that you don't even know what's going to be involved in these expansions packs that you get. Microtransactions, obviously, a hugely popular way for games to make money. You sell the game really cheap, and then those microtransactions, they just add up and add up. And then, of course, Jump Through Hoops DRM is making money in that it's attempting to prevent people from pirating the game to ideally, based in the mind of a marketing executive or somebody in a decision-making capacity at these companies, like, oh, people, there's DRM that blocks piracy. Oh, well, then the pirates will pay for the game then, if that's the case. Now, I don't agree with that, and I think most people don't agree with that. DRM is terrible. But since Kyle already chose microtransactions and I hate DRM, I guess I have to choose Season Pass? What? The hell's wrong with me? What's wrong with any of this? I should have put none of the above, but that would have defeated the point of this.
I would have picked that.
All right. I would try to argue further, but I feel like it already took long enough just getting the straw poll up there. So let's just see what you guys thought about this horrible, evil question. The least evil thing is microtransactions. So Kyle, you chose correctly, but a pretty decently even spread. But most people seem to agree that the season pass is the most horrendously awful in this situation. But maybe that's because of what we introduced it with.
Could be.
Anyway, though, so endeth the sword fight.
Yeah. And it's fairly close between the three, which means they're all equally horrible.
It's pretty close. They're all terrible.
Mostly.
They're all terrible things that companies shouldn't do.
Yeah.
Just make a game, sell the game, and let people play the game.
Right.
I don't mind microtransactions if they're purely aesthetic stuff. That I understand.
Yeah. I would much rather it be aesthetic.
It's optional. It doesn't affect gameplay. And people, you see somebody driving around with a silly thing, you either think, oh, that looks cool. Or you think, like, oh, that douche paid $20 for that sparkly thing.
You know what? Microtransactions should be like real life.
Yeah.
Like, you can buy nicer things that look cooler, but you can't, like, make yourself stronger.
I don't know if the real life correlation lines up there.
You can't, like, spend
real life and just general fairness.
But you can't spend $20 in real life and gain, like, +5 strength. You know
that's true. That's true.
I mean like that. Like, it should just be like, no, look at this cool hat I got.
Look at my
stupid shit like that.
That's okay.
By the way, I won both sword fights.
Kyle
and you
won
suck.
both sword fights. I lose. In that case, we have to move on to the news segment. It's time for some tech news. I have a few tech news stories here. News. We don't have the echo going on here.
Yeah.
All right, let's start off with this Ars Technica article about a 25 GPU cluster that will crack every standard Windows password in less than 6 hours.
Wow.
Every standard Windows password.
What does it mean by standard?
I will elaborate here once I switch tabs over to my notes where I have my secret notes. All right.
Okay.
So this computer cluster, which includes 25 AMD GPUs, can cycle through as many as 350 billion guesses per second. 350 billion in 1 second. How many? What percentage of a second per guess is that even? It's like such a finite number. Anyway. That means it can try every possible Windows passcode in the typical enterprise environments in less than 6 hours. That's based on the minimum requirements for passwords in Windows environments. It's built on it uses a virtualization software that can, of course, harness the power of the 25 AMD Radeon graphics cards, and it uses virtual OpenCL cluster platform, which is Linux-based, and then. That also allows the graphics cards to function as if they're running on a single desktop computer, and OCL Hashcat Plus, which is a freely available password cracking suite optimized for GPU computing. Now, it achieves the 350 billion guess per second speed when cracking password hashes generated by the NTLM cryptographic algorithm that Microsoft has included in every version of Windows since Server 2003. So chances are, if you're in an office environment, an enterprise environment using Windows software, you're using a version of the software that uses that standard of encryption. As a result, it can try an astounding 958 combinations in just that's a 95 to the 8th power.
Oh, wow.
958.
I was going to say, that's not very much in 5.5 hours.
958 combinations in just 95 to the 8th power combinations in 5.5 hours, which is enough to brute force every possible 8-character password containing upper, lowercase letters, digits, and symbols.
Wow.
And they say that specifically because an 8-character password using all of those is kind of the requirement in a lot of enterprise environments. That's kind of like the standard for that. The same passwords, if they're protected by Microsoft's LM algorithm, which is a weaker one, which is older, but many organizations enable it for compatibility reasons, to be compatible with older Windows versions, will fall in 6 minutes.
Wow.
Yes. Jeremy Gosney is the founder and CEO of Stricture Consulting Group, and he unveiled this machine last week at the Passwords to the 12th I think it's Passwords to the 12th? Passwords to the 12th Power conference. It's a conference in Oslo, Norway.
And he was promptly arrested 5 minutes later.
No, he's... I mean, you got to be happy that he's doing this stuff publicly and saying, look what these systems can do.
Right.
Not that he's...
But now a bunch of other scumbags are aware that this is possible.
Okay. Now, my question actually that was answered by a comment in this article, and I've had this question before, and the answer upon reading it should have seemed fairly obvious to me. It's like, you can't try that many passwords in any sort of environment, any sort of reasonable environment where you're like trying to log onto a website or log onto something. You can't keep trying 95 to the 8th billion whatever passwords. It'll lock you out after a certain number of tries. So what this is being used for is when you have like security breaches and they get all of the password data, and it might be hashed password data, so it's encrypted, so you can't necessarily just read it immediately. But if they get a dump of that and a dump of the user database, which means like your login IDs, then basically if they had that information, they run this offline. So, and basically they just have all this data and they just set up the machine and like, all right, hit that data and churn through it until you've discovered what all the passwords are. I see. That's how that works, for anyone who's wondering, practically speaking, how hackers might use this for nefarious deeds.
Someone said that article is 3 years old.
What? No, it's not. Oh, yeah, it is.
Is it really?
What? It is 3 years old.
Is it a typo?
No, I just completely blanked on that. Why did this pull up as a...
Where did you find it?
I think it was linked on... No, this is one of the ones that was linked on Twitter recently.
Really? Somewhat like a fan
All right,
suggestion?
well, this is even scarier then.
That's right. It's even more relevant now than it was 3 years ago.
Wow.
Take that.
Well, anyway.
Well, hey. We
that's probably
counted ourselves as being time sensitive.
That's probably my worst oversight in an awesome hardware story that I've come up with. Anyway,
didn't even need
now I'm even more scared. What could he do now? Why is that article 3 years old?
Yeah, what about the one 3 days ago?
It's terrible.
All right.
Am I getting a message right now about how?
I think your phone's going off.
It's over somewhere else.
You got a crack on your phone?
What? Oh yeah.
No.
My thing cracked.
When?
This is probably someone telling me how wrong I am.
Or you've just been hacked.
All right. Well, anyway, all right. This one I'm sure is relevant to current.
Because this is something you do now every time you just check the date.
Yeah, really. No, lesson learned there.
Never forget.
Nvidia's new memory. Gosh. This is GDDR5X.
Okay.
Because whenever you put an X on the end of something, it
makes it better.
Makes it better and faster. All right, so we've talked about HBM memory and HBM2 memory and how HBM2, or high bandwidth memory, is going to be sort of the wave of the future for 2016, but also how there's a potential massive shortage of it.
Okay.
So Nvidia, it seems, according to this article, is going to be using GDDR5X memory in some of their GPUs that they're coming out, possibly combining with Pascal GPU architecture in 2016. Let me just double check the date on this article, 13th of October 2015, which is today.
Oh.
I'm making sure I don't screw up again.
Right. Okay.
So,
I'm a bit paranoid now.
All right. What's different about GDDR5X memory other than the sexy X
Yes.
on the end. It doubles the speeds of current GDDR5 memory, theoretically.
Wow. Okay.
Theoretically. It's actually a very similar or almost identical memory architecture to currently available GDDR5. Double the prefetch data from 8. The way that they're doubling the speed is by doubling the prefetch data from 8 data words per memory access to 16 data words per data access. Why did they use different words for that? Doesn't matter. Double it from 8 to 16 data words per data access, which should theoretically double the bandwidth compared to GDDR5. Micron has actually designed GDDR5X. They've approached JEDEC, which is the governing body for memory in the industry. They're trying to standardize it, basically make it a standard so it can be adopted more widely in the industry. And Micron has increased the memory data rates of GDDR5 from 8 gigabits per second, that's what GDDR5 has, to 10 to 12 gigabits per second with their actual, I guess, working samples or prototypes that they've been working with. Future iterations they're hoping will surpass 14 gigabits per second, or even reach the theoretical maximum of 16 gigabits per second.
So is this fast? Is this going to be faster than HBM2?
Good question.
I'm curious.
Good question. This will be available in the second half of 2016. I know that doesn't answer the question that you asked, but I'm going in the order of my bullet points.
Okay.
When comparing GDDR5X to HBM and HBM 2.0, the high bandwidth memory still has significant advantages. Consumes less power, it reduces the required PCB space for a GPU, and it also offers a significantly higher amount of bandwidth than GDDR5X. So this is not a replacement or anything like that. It's more of like a holdover.
Until,
in my opinion.
So do you think this has anything to do with Nvidia? Remember AMD capitalized a lot of the share of HBM memory, and so Nvidia's
that might be the case.
That might be part of the reason why Nvidia's decided to go the other route, especially when you look at all the benefits of HBM over GDDR5X. You start connecting the dots, I suppose. Wow, AMD got a really early start on acquiring a lot of the HBM share from, was it Hynix?
Yes.
SK Hynix and stuff like that. So, damn, they actually got the one up on Nvidia this time, it seems. And I'm just speculating here, but if what you're saying is true and HBM still has all these advantages, I'm curious to see. I mean, wouldn't that be a turn of events if next year when Pascal comes out, it sips more power than an AMD card equivalent?
That would be a bit of a flip-flop. Now, to my mind, what this means is that Nvidia is kind of shoring up their bets on, because they need to be able to produce cards in volume. If the volume is not available for HBM2, then they're not going to be able to say well, here's our flagship, Titan XX or whatever, Titan XXX, I don't know, using HBM2 memory, and here's the actual 50 of them that we're able to sell to people.
Sure.
That would be very practical. So what we're probably going to see is flagship cards with HBM2 from Nvidia. It's like your 980 Ti equivalent. In the future, we'll get the HBM2, whereas your 980 equivalent for the next generation will have GDDR5X.
Right.
I'm sure there'll be benchmarks back and forth and debates about which one's better.
It could also be the fact that Nvidia perhaps was already working on GDDR5X long before the Theory line of cards came out from AMD.
It could be.
They've perhaps already invested a lot of R&D into this memory form factor or whatever. And they're like, yeah, let's just carry it out. Let's see it through Pascal. Let's use on Pascal. And then, based on those results, how we stack up against the AMD line of next-gen cards, we'll take it from there. Maybe we can do HBM2 or HBM3 on the next generation after Pascal.
HBM3?
I mean,
that's some heavy speculation there, Kyle.
I know, right? Conspiracy theories.
All right.
Got to bring that segment back.
Yeah, a couple more things to talk about here before we close off my half of the show. What?
All gray just made me laugh.
Why?
Titan XXX sounds like a name for a dildo.
Oh.
It does.
That'd be a very good
Actually,
right.
Titan XXX does exist, and it's right here. We already got it. Sorry.
What the hell's going on?
I don't know.
All right. Windows 10.
Beer.
There's a Windows 10 Insider Preview. This is build 1065. They have just kind of published this for Windows Insiders. New stuff with the build, such as like Cortana can read your handwriting now.
No, she
It's
cannot.
kind of fancy. Cortana will also look into your like recent stuff you've done, like bookings of movies and ticketed events through email confirmations, so she can be like, hey, maybe you should watch this movie. I don't know. That's, suggesting stuff. That's kind of cool. Hey, some new icons. Look at that regedit icon. Look at that. Is it fancy? You like that regedit icon?
Stupid.
It's sexy.
Nope.
It's super sexy.
Don't like it.
Anyway, the thing that's most interesting in this particular build, and the reason I'm bringing this up at all, is this right here, device activation improvements. So if you're interested in Windows 10 and you haven't done it yet, you might actually just be able to activate Windows 10 directly using a Windows 7, Windows 8, or Windows 8.1 key.
Ooh.
Since they've offered free upgrades to any of these people, rather than having to like install one of those versions and then like do the upgrade thing and for it to be like, hey, you're approved for the upgrade, and then go through that process. Just do a clean install and then just activate Windows 10 with your old key.
That's really nice.
That's nice.
Good
I
job.
like that.
Good job, Microsoft.
Yeah, good job, Microsoft. I mean, the reasoning for it is obvious. They're really trying to make Windows 10 as accessible and as I mean, that's why I'm kind of back and forth with it, is because they keep being more and more aggressive with the pop-ups on the Windows 7 and Windows 8.
Yeah.
It's like, it went from the tray thing that pops up to now it's like a larger window that pops up, and these things like, hey, you're ready to upgrade now, and I'm like, no, I'll upgrade when I want to.
I know you're there.
Anyway, but yeah, I mean, I guess that makes it easier.
Yeah,
it's more convenient. I like clean installs, so nice that they'll be able that they'll do that. One last thing I wanted to show you guys, and this is just a random thing that popped up on my feed this week, and I thought it was fascinating. Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con is it just was this past weekend.
Last week, yeah.
And there's a dude who made a freaking Hulkbuster costume.
This is pretty awesome.
And if you guys haven't seen this yet,
play the video.
Like, holy crap, check it out. Yeah, it's a Hulkbuster costume. It's 9.5 feet tall. It took him like 1,600 man-hours to make it, and it's apparently just look how huge that is. He's got these big old boots that he has to put on that make him like 3 feet taller.
And it looks very natural when he moves.
Yeah,
it looks like a machine or a robot is moving. Just how the joints move and the head, how it turns. Like, he really put a lot of thought into this.
It's got like active cooling on it. He's got like a fan on the back.
Basically stilts.
Yeah, so that's the boot that he wears that makes him that much taller. That's him kind of suiting up and putting the whole thing on.
Takes him 20 minutes to put it on.
Look at that. But I mean, like, once he gets it, like, really, it looks like one of those mech suits that you'd wear, in like a mech game.
95 pounds.
Yeah, it's 95 pounds of stuff. And of course there's a dude cosplaying as Hulk. I'm kind of curious if that guy was actually there as Hulk and just happened to be there. Or, yeah, it's like Hulk's like, no, don't.
That's a pretty good Hulk.
That was a pretty good Hulk.
Scary.
Anyway, dude's name is Thomas DiPetrillo. He works for Extreme Costumes, or at least works with Extreme Costumes. And that's...
You said there was internal cooling built in?
Pretty freaking badass. In one of the shots... as he's putting it on back here, when they're showing the pieces of it, you can see like a 120 millimeter fan that's on the back. Hold on.
Is it a Corsair AF?
Right there it was. Right there. See?
It's a computer fan.
Yeah, that's a computer fan right there. So yeah, I mean, I would imagine you'd want to have some kind of cooling built into something.
Just right on your balls.
Yeah,
I'd need like just a dedicated
pushing
nut
air
fan.
Right up.
Sack fan.
Because as long as your balls are in a cool temperature,
it all trickles
the rest
down,
of your
everything.
body generally feels okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's do one last Johnson check, and then let's move on to Kyle's half of the show.
All right.
I got a Johnson for Kyle. Not you, Kyle.
You're welcome.
I got a
I love
Johnson
your
for,
stuff, and that's why
Johnson for Kyle. So end of the show, Johnson. Kyle, he picked up a thumbscrew shirt. My thumbscrew shirts, which are back in stock now, by the way, for any of you guys who were looking for those and maybe I didn't have the right stock or the right size.
Kyle got double Johnson for Kyle.
Double Johnson for Kyle.
Woo! Thank you, sir.
Perfect way to end the show. Thank you guys all for watching my half of the show. Hit the like button and subscribe to my channel and all that kind of good stuff. Also, down in the description, you'll find a link to Kyle's half of the show. If you're watching live, though, don't go anywhere. We will be starting up that in just a few moments.
We will.
And that's all. That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
Sorry again about that article from 2012. that feels silly.
That should have been in your segment, tech of the day after yesterday.
Before tomorrow.
Before tomorrow.
That's the new segment.
There you go.
New segment idea.
It's all part of the plan.
All right. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll be right back.
Later.